There is no other medication which, within a week, can condemn someone to a life of addiction.
It's possible that I was promoting a drug on the basis of fraudulent science.
But there was just too much money to be made.
When they first entered life, their first breath of air came along with withdrawal symptoms.
If the pharmaceutical companies knew about the addiction possibilities, then it's horrific that they would steal my son away from me.
There is no other medication that kills so many people as opioids.
My name is Jacob. I'm 12 years old. Dear addiction, why did you turn my parents into something that they're not? I don't know my own father because of you. It's not really that cool to ruin people's lives. I couldn't have a normal childhood or life because of you.
My name is Kira, and I'm 11 years old. Dear addiction, you tore apart my family. Why mine? I've been lied to because of you. I have cried because of you. I have been bullied because of you. Signed, an upset child.
I don't think no one really understands how I feel. I don't even know where my dad is and really who he is, and also he's doing drugs, and I don't know if he OD'd and died or he just keeps ODing.
My dad would bring needles into the house, and then my friends, when they come over, they're like, "What's that?" And I would be embarrassed to bring any more friends over.
These are stories from a summer camp that no child should have to tell.
My mom doesn't really say anything about my dad doing drugs. Once I asked her, why is he doing drugs instead of seeing me? But really, she just says he's always a bad person, and I just stopped asking that question.
But all of these children have a secret that they need to share.
All right, show of hands. Do you have a parent, close friend, or relative who has died from drug abuse? So we got 100% of hands. Does anybody want to talk about that? Yes.
I know people that overdosed and died. You shouldn't go to rest like that. You should go to rest in a peaceful way. Not hurting and in pain and high and all that.
How about, do you have a parent, a close friend, or relative who has overdosed? So that's why we're doing this work, right? Is because all of us have those very, very, very hard and tragic things in common. We all know somebody who's overdosed, right? At least once. Anybody afraid that something might set off them using again?
When I was younger, in elementary school, and when my dad first started leaving and I would get in trouble, I would beg my mom not to tell my dad because I don't want him to find out and then him go start doing drugs again, because then it will affect me even more.
Sometimes what's going on in the house makes you want to not be there. Go ahead.
There's a lot of instances where I don't like being in the house because she's bringing drunk people over, high people over with their families and talking to them. And it makes me kind of uncomfortable because I don't like it in the house, you know?
My sister's name is Lara. I just love her. She's there for me. She's helping me get into middle school. I'm trying not to fall off the swing.
Sarah. She's probably my best friend. She doesn't deal very well with feelings. I think that's why she didn't participate very much today. And she's going into 6th grade this year, middle school. And that is a very big emotional step. When I was in middle school, I could probably name 4 or 5 people that could definitely sell me drugs. Or my closest friends that could give me drugs if I really wanted to ask for them. And I don't think she's ready to experience all of that and I don't think she's ready to be able to process things like that. It's a very, very scary thing because the amount of people that do those types of things in my grade is very high. I probably have like more friends that do than more friends that don't, or know more people that do than more people that don't. So it's very scary.
And in 2001, 2002, and 2003 was, for me, when the Oxycontin, it was everywhere. And I was in high school at the time, and everybody had access to it, at least the kids that I ran with. My opiate addiction got so bad that it brought me down to the inner city out here, where one night on Christmas Eve, I had my son, who was about maybe one and a half, in the back seat behind me, and my partner in the passenger seat. I was parked over here on the left, and I had gotten out of the car, left my son and his mom in the car, walked over to here, made a quick transaction with the guy, and then got back in the car, looped around to use the drugs, and that's when I realized that it was fake. So as crazy as I was back then, it made sense for me to, now I'm gonna turn around and this guy's gonna feel bad for me because he just ripped me off on Christmas Eve. And I actually tried to play that card with him. And I just said, you know, you ripped me off, and literally in seconds, he just reached for the wheel well of this Jeep Cherokee that was parked there on the corner, grabbed a pistol, and without saying anything, I kind of turned around at that point. I got my son in the car, and he basically just kind of walked me back to my car. And that was one of the harshest memories that I have of the things I used to do with my own son in the car, and the danger that I would put them in almost every day of the week for, you know, almost 2 years. That's where that one pill can take you, essentially. Now, when I really look at it, the big picture, where it all started for a lot of people, it's just taken so many lives and destroyed so many households and families, and I don't see a stop to it anytime soon. I blame the pharmaceutical companies, and I think they need to pay for the mistakes that they made or the problems that they put out there, and they also need to help pay for the solution.
The original opioid epidemic was a prescription opioid epidemic that was caused by overprescribing for the treatment of pain.
We found very early on was that 75% of the people who were using heroin had started by using prescription opiates. So it was an epidemic caused by the medical care system.
This is an epidemic that was caused by greed. This is a man-made epidemic that has cost us maybe 500,000 lives since the beginning of this crisis.
It was Purdue Pharma, with their painkiller Oxycontin, that revolutionized how opioids were marketed in the 1990s.
Imagine a life with chronic pain, persistent, debilitating, stabbing pain that goes on for weeks, months, even years.
Purdue Pharma was very effective in promoting their products and in persuading us in those early days that their drug was different from the opioids we were used to using, and that it was likely to be more effective and safer than the opioids that had been used before.
Some end up shuttling from doctor to doctor, desperate for relief, finding doctors who neither understand their pain nor know how to relieve it.
We were responding to a brilliant, multifaceted campaign that was really a marketing campaign disguised as education.
Although they may once have considered them dangerous and mind-numbing, many doctors and policymakers now say that opioids are safe and effective medicines for treating chronic pain.
Opioids are not safe. These are probably the single most dangerous class of medications that there is.
Some patients may be afraid of taking opioids because they're perceived as too strong or addictive. But that is far from actual fact. Less than 1% of patients taking opioids actually become addicted.
There is no other medication that kills so many people as opioids. There is no other medication which, within a week, can condemn someone to a life of addiction.
They were able to take this old generic drug and turn it into a blockbuster product, a product that would bring in more than $1 billion in sales a year. Other drug companies very quickly saw how profitable this was and began to do exactly the same thing. From around 1996 up until around 2011, there was a 900% increase in opioid addiction measured by people seeking treatment. And when you have a very large increase in the number of people with a disease over a short period of time, that is how you would define an epidemic.
One of the things that we were working against was an army of salespeople who were going out and telling doctors that these medications were safe.
Within 4 years of OxyContin being introduced, Purdue doubled the size of its sales force.
So at the time when I joined the company and on into the first couple of years, the 3 years that I was with the company, I was very excited about what I thought was the good that we were doing for the patient. However, it wasn't until several years later after I left the company that I began to realize, and it was brought to my attention that, what I could have been doing, not knowing at the time that I was doing it, was it's possible that I was promoting a drug on the basis of fraudulent science. One of the things that bothered me about a situation was they came out with a plan, to help doctors document better, and we would go and provide them with these tools to better document the treatment of pain. But then what would happen when those same exact doctors would get in trouble for, quote, overprescribing, using the documentation that they provided? They wiped their hands. No support for those doctors. And there's doctors who lost licenses, doctors who committed suicide, doctors who went to prison, lost everything. And they were doing exactly what the company taught us to teach them to do. Looking back and knowing what I know now, I have no doubt in my mind that who's to blame is Purdue themselves and the family that owns the medication, that owns the company.
Purdue Pharma argues that they manufacture a government-approved medicine that represents a tiny portion of opioid prescriptions, while providing life-changing relief for millions of pain patients who need it.
I don't think that we as a state and as a country understood the depths and the extent to which the defendant members of the Sackler family and Purdue were engaged in this misconduct and how far-reaching it was. But now we know. This is an email conversation between then Purdue President Richard Sackler and an acquaintance around 2001. And the acquaintance writes, "Abusers die. Well, that is the choice that they made. I doubt a single one didn't know of the risks." And Richard Sackler writes back, "Abusers aren't the victims, they are the victimizers." And I gotta tell you, every time I read this email, it's hard to read. It's hard to stomach that somebody would write that about people that are suffering, people that are in real distress, and people that have died. And it's that kind of thinking that I think powered this company during that period and led to a deceptive, fraudulent, misleading product development and marketing strategy that preyed on people and their misery and made money off of people's misery. And I think that's what these emails show.
They didn't take any notice of the alarm bells. They didn't take any notice of what we were saying. They didn't take any notice of the studies that were coming in that were showing clearly that the high doses were harming people and showing clearly that there was an epidemic of abuse and deaths. And they didn't alter their marketing tactics, which I see as much worse than what they did in the first place, is that they didn't take any notice of all the warning signs until they were forced to.
Do you believe Purdue's marketing was overly aggressive?
No.
Do you believe Purdue's marketing was appropriate?
I believe so.
I presume somewhere Richard Sackler in the dark of night knew what he was doing was wrong. But there was just too much money to be made. And I think for me, we learned how for the banks, they were too big to fail in 2008, 2009. Well, in some of these pharmaceutical companies, it feels like they're just too big to care.
We're learning more about a former football star found dead in an apparent drug overdose last Friday in Scottsdale. And tonight,
I'm angry that the world lost a really wonderful person. And I'm angry that his daughter has to grow up without a father. And I'm angry that I don't get to hug my son.
This is where Jill Hernandez came to watch her son Brock grow up every weekend.
This field brings back a lot of memories. He just lived for being on the field.
That's Brock, number 22, when he was 13 years old.
I mean, he was just a gifted athlete. Basketball, baseball, football. But football was his passion. He was such a good player, and he gave his heart every single game that there were injuries every year, or if not every season, for whatever he was playing. And sometimes that led to a broken bone, a surgery, screws being put in his foot, and he almost always was prescribed some form of painkiller.
Brock died in 2017. He was 24 years old.
It's not just another story. It's a live human being that once touched our lives, was in our hearts, that we all miss. It's not just another number on the TV. If the pharmaceutical companies knew about the addiction possibilities, and it's looking from what I read that they did, then it's horrific that they would steal my son away from me.
As the opioid crisis, feel the pain.
48 states have filed lawsuits against pharmaceutical companies for their role in the opioid crisis.
So I have traveled across Ohio over the last several years. I have seen the devastation that this epidemic is wreaking on our state. It is a human tragedy of epic proportion, ripping families apart, tearing at the fabric of our communities, and holding our state back.
New York is in the midst of a crisis that has ravaged our communities and families, a crisis that is claiming lives, young and old, all across our state and our nation. A crisis that we firmly believe was created and perpetuated by the manufacturers and distributors of opioid drugs.
Today we're suing the giant, the pharma lord who created OxyContin.
We believe the Sacklers' wrongful acts have directly contributed to the wake of addiction, death, and devastation in Indiana and across this country.
Our complaint alleges that Purdue Pharma knew as early as the 1990s that
one of their drugs, Oxycontin, was among the most abused opioids in the country.
This lawsuit contains detailed allegations about the Sackler family and their attempts to hide the vast fortunes they collected at the expense of actual lives.
I am worried about my boys being subject to addiction and that whole lifestyle. It scares me to death to think that they would do what I was doing at their age. You know, when I was 10, 11 years old, I had gotten an injury playing football, which my son plays football. I think about if he gets an injury and has to get pain medicine, what's going to go through his mind? Is it going to be the same thing that went through my mind? Is he going to like that feeling? Of that pain being relieved.
Do it to me, do it to me.
So when Caden was born, I was kind of a mess. I mean, I was hanging by a thread. I mean, I'm pretty sure I was high when I was watching and participating in the delivery of my son. And then, you know, couldn't wait to get out of there to go use more. It's a father and son. Come on, we gotta rescue them. They're gonna die, they're gonna dry out. When he was first born, they actually had to give him, I think it was opium. They put it into his baby formula just to keep him from shaking, and that was kind of a scary thing. They just said it was withdrawal symptoms, but he was shaking. So that's when things for me really got out of control, because the guilt and shame really built up at that point. When they first entered life, their first breath of air came along with withdrawal symptoms, you know? So just thinking about that, it always brings up a weird feeling within me, but it also drives me to do more of what I do today and live the way that I do today and set more examples for them, you know, and just be their hero or whatever I can be, so that's never becomes an issue, you know, in my eyes, kind of breaking the chain. So they don't have to be a part of me, my brother, my uncle, you know, the family generations of, you know, active addiction.
I'm an interventionist here in Connecticut. I've been messaging back and forth with your son, Derek. We've been communicating for quite a bit now. He's trying to get some help.
Yes, that's all. He never had a long-term rehab.
He hasn't had a slice of treatment at all.
No, and he was always dead against going to a long-term rehab. Always. I would beg him, and he just wouldn't. He always had to try to do it his way, and it never worked, obviously. He's too dependent on us. I don't know how to get him to start taking care of himself.
Hi, Kevin Morris with Confidential.
Nice to meet you.
This is Doreen Ciccarello, our family liaison.
Mike Mandeville.
Nice
Mike,
to meet you. Finally.
Okay, so what brings you guys here today?
Well, we are running out of options with our son. We feel like we've tried everything we possibly could. We don't seem to be getting anywhere. He keeps relapsing.
So it sounds like you guys have exhausted all resources and done whatever you can financially and...
We have. This time we've gotten so desperate, he overdosed, and by the grace of God, I had found him.
And so from you know, coming out of his overdose, he went...
Still right back into it.
Still
he did
right.
Not stop.
He didn't stop.
So what we're going to try to do is, you know, show up tomorrow and offer him the help and kind of see where it goes.
He sees me, you know, begging him to please stop putting us through this. I mean,
most of our life has been gone. That was supposed to be the time of our life.
You know, I think we've prepared as much as we possibly can here. You know, tomorrow's the big day. You know, just remain hopeful and try to get some sleep and hit it first thing in the morning.
I'm excited.
What's up, dude?
What's up?
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Mind if we talk to you for a few minutes?
No.
Feeling all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to do this right now.
That's all right. Don't worry about any of that. You look fine to me. We've been talking, and we've put together a nice little situation for you. It's long term. There's really no time limit on it. So there's not going to be a lot of pressure for you, you know, outside of whatever pressure you might put on yourself. And you got a loving family that supports the heck out of you, you know. And I'll be by your side every step of the way. So all we need to know from you is, how do you feel about that? Yeah? Like the idea? You know, I'm excited for you, and I know this is confusing and probably a little difficult to comprehend. The good thing for you is everything's kind of taken care of. You don't really have to do anything but put one foot in front of the other, you know? So you think it sounds like a good idea? Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Awesome.
It's a chance of a lifetime, bud.
Yeah.
You've been offered a gift of a lifetime.
I love you.
Oh,
so proud. You'd be good. You'd be good. You'd be good. This is what you need.
Wanted. Yes.
So Derek, we'll let you get your bearings, and then we'll get on the phone and screen. Get your screen for detox, which is, I think you've been down that road before. You know, they'll just ask you a bunch of yes or no questions and stuff like that. So I'm proud of you, man.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Nice fresh start for you.
I'm
You know?
so proud of you, bud.
Yeah.
We really are.
It's a chance of a lifetime.
It's been a gift. It's a full scholarship.
Doing everything I can not to get emotional here.
Been struggling for a while now. Maybe since 2005. Long time.
This means a lot to your parents. Do you want to say anything to them?
They've been here for the whole thing. They've been around for everything. Thank you.
Over here. Never, never, we'll never, ever give up. Never, like your Christine says, never give up. I love you. This is a chance of your lifetime. You're gonna get all better. Come back.
Derek has been struggling with addiction for 14 years. It's hard to break free.
He's saying he's not getting on the plane like this. He's saying he didn't get his methadone or take his methadone, and he did. He did. He's freaking out. He's getting scared now.
Derek's going through it right now. He, you know, his mind right now is saying, I want to go use, you know? And that's a really common thing, and I'm just trying to explain to him that he's going to be okay. Well, he's just trying to accomplish getting, you know, getting high one last time. He doesn't want to think about this. He doesn't want to feel this right now, and nobody does. It's a scary, scary situation.
Pretty spoon.
You're gonna be all right, dude. Promise you. And your mom's out there shaking like a leaf right now, thinking that, oh man, we did the wrong thing here, and this is bad, and she is counting on this.
It was scary for a moment. Didn't think it was going to happen. And I don't know, whatever Kevin said, what a blessing, because
What a blessing.
and he looks like he's ready,
He'll start the rest
to be
of
a
his
man,
life.
man up and do it.
Yep, we did it.
Yeah, we did it. God, yes. It's awesome. So awesome.
It's a really nice place, though.
Yeah. The detox is even nicer. She's been to Awaken.
I haven't been to this detox yet, but
I have pictures of the detox. I'll show you.
I'm really happy that it did happen the way it did. You know, at first I was struggling with it. I didn't know how I'd feel about it, but you know, in the end, I'm just glad that it happened the way it did, and you know, I get to, you know, actually get a chance at, you know, at this recovery.
Derek flew to Florida for rehab. 2 months later, he's clean and doing well.
There are many lessons we need to learn, and there's a lot of blame to go around, and I don't really see that we're fixing these mistakes.
Looking back, knowing what I know now, I don't put the blame on anyone except for the company themselves and probably the FDA that approved their product.
The FDA exists to protect the pharmaceutical industry, primarily, and it's funded by the pharmaceutical industry.
It so happens that the same FDA official who approved OxyContin would shortly after approving the drug take a position working for Purdue Pharma, and we've seen that happen at FDA's analgesic division over and over again.
We have a fundamental problem when the profits of one small group are in direct conflict with the interests of most of society, when some group has no legal reason not to maximize their profit, even if doing so will result in killing people.
I am starting to get concerned that all of this attention paid on this one family is missing the role played by other pharmaceutical companies that did exactly what Purdue and the Sacklers did. And we're also missing some of the failures of our regulatory agencies, federal agencies, state agencies, all of the problems that need fixing. If we blame this all on the Sacklers and their greed, I'm worried we're not going to address many of these other failures.
Purdue Pharma is not the only drug company to be blamed for this crisis. Others are also being called to account.
This is not going to go away. It's going to go from one generation to the next. I feel like it just changes generation. I believe it's just getting worse. Younger and younger. People that are using are younger now than I remember ever being. And it's mostly because of all the pills that they're popping on, that they're putting on people. Like, these kids are actually getting pills for pain, for an accident or something like that, and being pumped all these pills, and then they expect them not to be hooked on them when they actually stop giving it to them. So they actually will look for that numbness with heroin, which is the next step. So unfortunately, I don't see this stopping anytime soon. When you look at the city, right, and you hardly know what's going on, it looks so quiet. But once you look down to actually the street, so many things going on. There's a person in the corner selling drugs to someone. I worry for my people, because it's not going to go away. Living on the street was horrible because you kind of don't have purpose. You don't know where to go. Every day was different. Everybody that you met wasn't there the next day.
Having survived these back streets of addiction, Billy now devotes his time helping others trapped by this epidemic.
Probably doing whatever you need to do to get high. You don't want to face reality. You don't want to face the fact that you don't have a place to go. You haven't taken a shower in days. So you don't have any place to stay. You don't want to face that you haven't changed your underwear in how long, you know. So that's what drugs did to me. Jesse, what's up, baby? How you doing? You remember all that time that you were overdosing almost every day?
Yes.
I found you in the hospital a couple of times. I'm like, what the hell?
I was spiraling.
Yeah, and
Spiraling because I really was tired of the games. I was tired of the vibes. I was tired of the creeps. I was tired. Getting beat every other date, like.
Are you okay? Yeah, what happened?
I will show you. I was like, you have hard
Yeah.
to stay. And he's like, wow, what's up? And I was like that. And I was like, nah, I'm just kidding. And he went, bah. And I went to get.
He just assaulted you like that?
I was like, I have money. Like, what the fuck?
I'm sorry, baby, that it
I didn't
happened.
want to make it hot. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
of
was
course.
just, like, joking, you know.
Well, nobody should be hitting you. Nobody should be touching you. Are you all right? You gonna be okay?
Just 1 month later, this 20-year-old woman died on these streets from a fentanyl overdose.
These fake oxys, you can find them anywhere in the street. They have them in every other corner or whatever. They put fentanyl and they mix them with any other pill and they crush them and they put them in, they compress them into this. Right now I'm gonna test it for fentanyl in this cooker. This is the fentanyl strip, which will show us if it has fentanyl. You just let it soak in. The water will soak in automatically. If it has 2 lines, it doesn't have fentanyl. And if it has 1 line, it has fentanyl. And looking at this right now, it has fentanyl. It only has 1 line. A person that doesn't have that tolerance of fentanyl will take that pill, will overdose. Just the fact that it's going to be a shock to their body, because they're not used to opiates like that, or at least not fentanyl. It does worry me a lot because it looks so good. You would think that something fake would look different, but it doesn't. It looked very good. I didn't think it would test positive, and right now I see that it's totally fentanyl. These are supposed to be prescribed, so how can you get thousands of them, you know? So yeah, most likely it comes from across the border or something.
The fentanyl pills are coming across the Mexican border. For the most part, they're manufactured in Mexico, and then they'll smuggle them across the border. So this is a recent seizure. Now you're looking at enough fentanyl to kill tens of thousands of people in this one seizure. We see an inordinate amount of young people getting hit with these things because they think that they're taking mom and dad's oxycodone that they were stealing out of the medicine cabinet, and that's not what this is. We see it every place. We see it in rich white people, we see it in poor Hispanic people, we see it in middle-class black people, we see it men, women, no age disparity, we see it every place. We're gonna seize over 1 million of these this year. And it's such an amazing thing to think about how much is coming across when 4 years ago we had 0. Think about the idea that 5 years ago, the United States had 5% of the world's population. We were using about 80% of the world's oxycodone. So we clearly had an overprescribing and an overuse issue. And I think that led to this high addict population that we had. As we realized what happened and we started clamping down on these prescriptions, well, we've got this gigantic addicted population of Americans out there that need an opiate. So the Mexican cartels are smart enough to realize, well, they manufacture an opiate that can meet that need.
Phoenix is one of the main hubs for drug smuggling. The majority of what we're seeing is coming from the south, coming from Mexico. You know, it was heroin, and now we're seeing the fentanyl pills. We're seeing the blue M30 pills. That's what's hitting our communities hard right now. And they look like oxycodone, but they're not. They're laced with fentanyl. And that's what people are dying from. So my guys are set up right now on 2 houses that are selling heroin and the M30 fentanyl pills. We have this residence surrounded with surveillance units and units that are going to make the stops. 10-4. Hey, this looks like a good stop, so we need to get around this vehicle, surround it. Sammy, get out of the truck.
You see me trying to pull you over them lights back there, right?
Yeah, I was tripping out. Watch out, man.
Hey, Sam, get.
Hey, I'm relaxed, Holmes.
Better calm down.
Hey, bro.
Hey,
Doing nothing wrong,
no.
man.
We tell you to pull you over, you get pulled over. Put your hand on your head.
You're on the front line of this opioid crisis. Does what you see make you worry about the future?
It makes me question myself on what we're doing out here. We're being overwhelmed with this drug issue here, this narcotics issue, especially the opiates right now. I don't see it stopping. I don't see it slowing down, is what I'm trying to say.
It looks used. 8.2 on their scale. So there's like 2, like a quarter ounce.
We knew that house was very active, and this is proving our point right now. So it was a good night. Took a lot of methamphetamines off and some heroin too. I don't see an end to this crisis. Are we winning the war on drugs right now? No. But we're trying, and we're not going to stop fighting.
Drugs were always around ever since I was younger. I tried my best to stay out of it, but it's not as easy as it seems. My name is Ryan Keith Bowens. 2 years ago, when I turned 25, I was shot in the back of my leg and developed nerve damage and a broken femur. About 6 months after that, they stopped prescribing the medications, but the pain didn't stop. So I started going about my own way to find my own medications. Well, at first it was just the pain. Then it led to addiction. I had to go, like I said, I had to go about my own means. I would find people that would prescribe them and buy them off of them. I steal money. I was dealing with other drugs to come about obtaining the drug I needed. My daughter's name is Paris Mae Bowens. She's 3 years old. She was born July 20th. I miss her so much. She's my world, you know. She's my driving force. I got several pictures of her. I hang it up on my wall, wake up to it, keeps me going. Daddy loves you, baby.
Pharmaceutical companies will likely be fined billions of dollars for igniting this crisis. But will these children ever be free of America's opioid epidemic?
My hope for Sarah are that she can grow up and have a family of her own, and if she so chooses to, she can separate herself from the addiction or recovery community, and it won't come back to haunt her later. My message to men and women in active addiction that have children is just to realize your actions are bigger than you, and that your actions could affect your kids or your kids' friends or your grandkids.
Sanctuary.